have yet another YouTube confession to make. Even though I lived my entire life in Oklahoma, I have no idea how football works. I played this game for over an hour, and I still don't know how football works. So bear with me while we both try to make it through this review together. Released for the Sega CD in 1993, Walsh College Football was the first college football entry for EA Sports, which would later become known as the NCAA Football yearly release property. Walsh College Football is presumably for the 1994 season, and was followed up with Walsh College Football 95 the following year. Even though college sports titles are not allowed to have actual player or roster likenesses present, so the yearly iteration seems kinda pointless now in retrospect, but the publishers gotta make their Benjamins. Also to note, it shows it was released in the UK and Brazil regions, both of which where American football is practically unheard of. I honestly would love to see the sales figures for the collegiate American football games in those regions. To begin, this is a cross-platform release, so also available on the Sega Genesis. The main difference between these two iterations is firstly, the obligatory Red Book audio for the Sega CD titles and menus. And more obviously, the fact that the Sega CD version has an entire vault of FMV sequences of coaching from Bill Walsh himself.
Against traditional rivals, scouting is very important. You get to know the other coach frontwards and backwards.
There are several subsections that dive into various points of the game, and there's a whole section that goes into detail on strategizing various elements of game day.
The two-point conversion is naturally very interesting. There's a surprise element. You come out very quickly, put the ball in play, and try to get a quick 2 points before the opponent can adjust.
I thought this was kind of interesting, and I watched almost all of them to try to get a better understanding of how football works. Another difference I noticed, because the Sega CD has a nice RAM bank, you can load in a clip of crowd cheer noise in the RAM to then play on loop for the duration of the entire game. Much like how the crickets in Night Trap work, or the audio for the shooting scenes in Ground Zero, Texas. The Genesis version just has you playing in a pandemic-era stadium to cardboard cutouts, it feels. It also seemed to me that the graphics had just ever so slightly more dynamic color range on the Sega CD than the Genesis. What do you think? There are a few different modes of play. For recording of this video, I just stuck with exhibition play, but there is also 2 different playoff modes as well. I thought it was also cool that before the game and during halftime and after the game, that at the broadcast booth, you can see scores of other games also going on across the country at the same time. It offered an interesting level of immersion that I haven't seen in other sports games I've played, which admittedly is basically NBA Jam and NHL hits. I did notice that as far as gameplay, that it seemed the Sega CD version was a bit more straightforward. You get the ball, and then a prompt comes up, and you press A, B, or C to make a play. On the Genesis version, that never happened. And honestly, I really wasn't able to figure out how to actually play the game. So I just said, F it, I guess I'm running this sucker myself all the way to the end zone. Other than that, I'm pretty sure everything else where the gameplay was identical. My only complaint on the Sega CD port is that in a perfect world, at halftime you would have gotten a randomly served coach tip FMV sequence from about 8 predetermined selections, but unfortunately that idea wasn't apparent. Somewhat disappointing. There is not much that can be said about the sound design. The Red Book audio tracks were all decently executed, and compared to the Genesis tracks, which were not badly composed or programmed in their own right, the Red Book audio on the Sega CD just lifts this version up a bit higher than the cartridge counterparts. And after experiencing the stark silence of the Genesis version while in game, it was nice to have some crowd noise on the Sega CD version. Not quite the difference between like NBA Jam on the Genesis versus the Super Nintendo, where one has music and the other one is completely silent, but the crowd cheers definitely make it livelier. I'm also pretty sure that all the sound effects samples were the same on either platform.
First down.
The Genesis version shows that this is a Jim Simmons production. His name is all over a lot of the 16-bit era EA Sports titles, showing up on Bill Walsh, NHL Hockey, NHLPA Hockey, College Football 96, FIFA 97, NFL 94 with Joe Montana, Madden Football, and the list just goes on and on. I noticed his name was absent on the Sega CD conversion though, but replaced by Michael Kusaka. And where Simmons did all the programming solo on the Genesis release, CD version had programming handled by Gary Roberts, Al Rubin, and Jim Sproul. The manual shows post-production video handled by Ernest Adams, so I'm assuming he handled the FMV sequence conversion to the Sega CD codecs. Adams has been on the record as stating that the Sega CD was a headache to develop for, and attribute that to why a lot of cross-platform titles were more or less just the Genesis game with Red Book audio added in, like with this release for example. Now the music was handled by Russell Leiblich, which he did the music for the now exalted NHL 95 as well. Rob Hubbard assisted in sound direction for Bill Walsh along with him, and he was also credited for the music composition on NHL 95. In the end, it was interesting to be able to sit down and play this, just more or less to see where the EA NCAA football property's roots are founded on, as this was the very first NCAA football title released. And side by side, I would say, obviously, if you're going to play this particular entry, the best place is the Sega CD. Where both versions are essentially the same game, the Sega CD does offer a few improvements over the Genesis version that helps out and makes this version much stronger in the end. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm sure there are much better versions of NCAA football to play since then. I'm sure any number release on the PS3 or Xbox 360 would be much more exciting to play.
Tackle at the 26.
Also, EA just announced that they have the rights secured again to get back to NCAA football games, but we all know they will just be wall-to-wall microtransactions, so I would say to just stick with any of the entries on the Xbox 360 or the PS3.
Throws it into coverage and it's intercepted. And this could be a big return. Touchdown, Texas! So a great play by the defender to give his team 6 points.
That was a very good play, and that will certainly help build his team's momentum.